Hey guys, welcome to Quinian's Budget Crafts. So there are a few ways to do bricks. I'm using my rollers here. This one is kind of like an older sort of brick. It looks, like that. And then a newer, cleaner brick, like so. And then a little bit of a hybrid. It's broken plaster. So a good way to do these bricks here is just go ahead and base everything in black. That's the best way to start. And then I'm going to use these four colors here. Starting with spiced carrot, then going to ripe tomato, then the crimson, and then on the nicer brick, so that the mortar between the joints isn't black, I'm going to base the whole thing in khaki, so that when we're done with this, it's got the newer kind of look to it. All of these are going to get all three of these colors, except this one is going to get khaki, so I'll do that one first, and just kind of base the whole thing in this. Because this is our mortar color, we want to make sure that it is in between all the cracks. We just want to, swipe back and forth to make sure that there's not any buildup so you can still see the cracks. So I do have my overhead fan turned on up there. That'll help to dry this faster as I'm painting. I don't think one coat is enough. You can still see a lot of black through that, and I want this wall to be a little bit brighter. Alright, so this one needs to dry completely before you start putting the red on, or it's going to get all messy. But we got these two to do anyway, so we'll go ahead and start with this. Starting with the orange. Just run your brush across the bricks so you don't get too much of it in the cracks. And it doesn't need to be 100%. At least on these dark ones, you want it to be a little dark still. And depending on how dark you want this, you may want to do a couple of coats, but don't try to get it 100%. Just sort of, go over in patches. If your fan is running up there, you should have these pretty dry by now, dry enough to continue anyway. So now the ripe tomato is like a cross between orange and red. This is darker than the orange though, so go a little easier on this, depending on how dark you want your bricks to be. Before with the orange, I was just getting the blobs off. On this, I'm actually getting a lot of the paint off. This one you do want to do in noticeable little spots instead of across the whole thing, at least to start with, and then you can go through and sort of dust it, like, dust it for fingerprints, just to sort of blend it in. With this lighter color brick, you could stop here or stop on the previous step, however you want it to be. I'm not real sure what color I'm going for here, just painting until it looks right. Once you're happy with your red-orange mix, then you can go straight into the regular old red. And with the red, you just want to make continuous passes all the way down. If you get streaks, just sort of go back over that streak to blend it in. How much actual red you put in really depends on what look you're going for. You could skip it entirely, Looks pretty good on something like this, like an old zombie apocalypse, or maybe for a firehouse, something like that. With the broken plaster one, it is going to be red brick underneath the plaster, so that you probably want to go a little heavier with the red. So that's pretty good for these two. If you wanted and you just really like doing meticulous stuff, you can go back through with your khaki or a white or something and go between each of these lines like a super tiny little brush. I like that how it is. If this were on like a large building, like a modern day Macy's kind of building, I'd probably do a darker, larger brick border, and that would make this make a lot more sense. But for a base coat, this looks pretty good. Now for this one, to complete the plaster, unless you want a burned building, it's kind of what it looks like right now, use the old antique white or something similar, and then paint the plaster after you've done the bricks. If you get plaster on the edge of the brick, that's totally fine, but if brick is on the plaster, that would look weird. So start with the heaviest amount on your brush in the middle of your plaster areas, and then once you've run out of paint on your brush, you can feather it to the bricks. How I like to get the paint on there so it looks kind of like plaster, and it also helps to feather it towards the brick, is to just repeatedly stab at it like this. If you're worried about hurting your brush, I really wouldn't be, but if you are, you can use like a sponge or something. That would work pretty good too. But this helps prevent any sort of brush streaks, and it makes it kind of fit towards the edge a little bit smoother. There you go. Now if you wanted a little bit of plaster still on the brick, you can do that the same method, just sort of tapping it. You can use a sponge, you could dry brush it. I think what I'll do is I'll tap it, but with less paint on the brush. So it sort of gently fades off the brick from the plaster. That way you don't have any harsh lines. Unless you were trying to get harsh lines on purpose, then I would go through very neatly. These big dark circles do bother me, so I'll just go back and put a little bit more paint right on those. Might be a little thick, but it'll dry. There you go, something like that. Well, there you go, guys. Got your broken plaster, your old zombie apocalypse bricks, and your newer sort of Macy's type bricks. Like I said, you could just leave the reds off of this entirely and just go with the tannish orangey color. But that's the basic base coat for bricks without any sort of washes or flocking or anything. So if I do bricks, this is what I'm doing, and then I'll add things to it. Hopefully this color scheme helps you or gives you some ideas. That's it for this one. I'll catch you guys in the next one.